A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Korn, and I am sitting here in our living room in Jerusalem with my brother Herman. It is a beautiful afternoon here, March 17, 2026, and we have a really substantial topic to get into today. It is one of those subjects that has been hovering in the background of our lives here for decades, quite literally, but has only recently come into the full light of public discourse.
Herman Poppleberry here, and yeah, Korn, this one is a deep dive into the evolution of the Israeli drone program. Our housemate Daniel sent this over this morning. He was looking at some of the recent defense exports coming out of Israel and realized that the public conversation around these technologies has changed completely in just the last few years. It is a classic case of an open secret becoming an open market.
It really is. For the longest time, if you lived here or followed defense news, there was this bizarre, almost theatrical dance. Everyone knew Israel was a world leader in armed unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, but the official line was always strategic ambiguity. You would see a grainy video of a strike on the news, and the official military report would just say an aircraft was involved. They would never use the word drone or UAV when referring to offensive operations. Then, in July of 2022, the military censor finally lifted the veil and allowed the media to report on the fact that the Israeli Air Force uses armed drones.
It was a watershed moment. That shift from the Phantom drone program to the public unveiling of the Heron TP and the Hermes 900 capabilities wasn't just about transparency, it was about business and geopolitics. By acknowledging these platforms, Israel was able to move from being a quiet pioneer to a dominant global superpower in the drone ecosystem. Today, these drones are no longer just military assets. They are a primary pillar of Israel's geopolitical leverage. When you sell a country a high-end drone system, you aren't just selling hardware, you are creating a decades-long strategic partnership.
And that is what Daniel was asking about. He wanted us to break down the current arsenal, the difference between surveillance and offensive roles, and specifically how miniaturization and AI are changing the tactical reality on the ground right now. It is a big topic, but I think we can really peel back the layers on how the Israeli model of drone warfare actually works. Herman, let's start with the philosophy. What exactly is the Israeli model when it comes to unmanned systems?
The core of the Israeli model is the integration of the sensor-to-shooter loop. In many militaries, drones were originally seen as an add-on to the Air Force, a way to get eyes in the sky without risking a pilot. But in Israel, they became the backbone of the entire tactical network. The goal is to make the time between identifying a threat, the sensor, and neutralizing it, the shooter, as close to zero as possible. To do that, you need a very specific kind of ecosystem where the drone isn't just a camera, it is a node in a massive real-time data network.
Right, and that ecosystem is dominated by two massive players, Israel Aerospace Industries, or IAI, and Elbit Systems. They have slightly different philosophies, but together they have essentially cornered a huge chunk of the global market. IAI is a government-owned company, often focusing on the massive strategic platforms, while Elbit is a publicly traded giant known for its versatility and high-tech integration. Herman, let's start with the big stuff. If you are looking at the Israeli hangars today, what are the flagship platforms that define their long-range capabilities?
The big one, the heavy hitter, is the Heron TP, also known as the Eitan. This is a massive machine. We are talking about a wingspan of 26 meters, which is roughly the size of a Boeing 737 airliner wing to wing. It is a medium altitude, long endurance platform, or MALE. What makes the Eitan special is its persistence. It can stay in the air for over 30 hours, and it operates at altitudes of up to 45,000 feet.
45,000 feet? That is well above commercial air traffic. At that height, it is effectively invisible and inaudible to anyone on the ground without high-end radar, right?
Precisely. And because it is so large, it can carry a massive payload over 2,000 kilograms. This isn't just about cameras. We are talking about specialized maritime patrol radar, electronic intelligence suites that can intercept communications from hundreds of miles away, and yes, precision-guided munitions. The Eitan is essentially a strategic asset. When people talk about Israel's ability to monitor or strike distant targets, like in the long-range operations we saw during the tensions in 2025, this is the platform they are usually referencing. It is the long-range eye in the sky that never blinks.
And then you have the Hermes series from Elbit, which seems to be the workhorse for more tactical and regional operations. I see the Hermes 900 mentioned in almost every operational report these days. It seems to be the go-to for the Israeli Air Force.
The Hermes 900, or the Kochav, which means star in Hebrew, is arguably the most successful export drone in Israeli history. It is slightly smaller than the Heron TP, but incredibly versatile. It has an endurance of 36 hours and can carry about 350 kilograms of payload. What makes the Hermes 900 stand out is its multi-sensor capability. It can carry a system called Sky, which is a wide-area persistent surveillance system. Imagine a camera that does not just look at one house or one car, but records an entire city simultaneously in high resolution.
Wait, an entire city at once? How does an operator even process that much information? That seems like a data nightmare.
They don't, at least not alone. This is where the AI integration comes in. The system tags movement, identifies patterns, and allows users to go back in time. If a blast occurs, they can literally rewind the footage of the entire city to see where the vehicle that planted the device came from 2 hours prior. It is like a TiVo for the battlefield. That is the surveillance side of the house. But the prompt Daniel sent also asked about offensive operations. This is where the line gets a bit blurred, especially with the shift from man-in-the-loop to man-on-the-loop systems.
Let's define those terms for the listeners, because they are crucial for understanding the ethics and the technology.
Right. Man-in-the-loop means a human is actively flying the drone and must pull the trigger for every single action. Man-on-the-loop means the drone is flying itself and using AI to identify targets, but a human is monitoring the feed and has the power to veto or authorize the strike. We are moving rapidly toward a reality where the AI does the heavy lifting of identification, and the human is just the safety catch.
And that leads us to a third category of drone that Israel pioneered, which is perhaps even more significant for modern warfare, the loitering munition. Some people call them suicide drones or kamikaze drones, but the technical term is loitering munition. The IAI Harop is the king of this category.
The Haroop is a fascinating piece of engineering. It is unique because it is both the sensor and the weapon. It has an endurance of 9 hours. It can fly over a target area, and if it doesn't find a target, it can actually fly back and land to be used again. But its primary mission is to detect radiation from enemy radar or use its electro-optical sensor to find a specific vehicle. Once it locks on, it becomes a high-speed missile. It is incredibly difficult to intercept because it has a very low radar cross-section and can approach from any angle.
I remember seeing the Harop in action during the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia a few years back. It looked like a small stealth plane that just dived into its target. It really changed the math for air defense in that conflict.
It is a suppression of enemy air defenses in a box. Usually you have a radar that looks for a plane, fires a missile, and the plane tries to dodge. With a Harop, the drone is looking for the radar. If you turn your radar on to find the drone, you are basically giving it a lighthouse to home in on. This is a perfect example of the technical mechanism Israel uses to maintain control in contested environments. These drones are not just remote-controlled planes, they are flying nodes in a massive encrypted data network.
And that resistance to jamming is key. We actually touched on this back in episode 738 when we talked about the sabotage of air defenses. If you are flying a drone over 1,000 kilometers away, you can't rely on line-of-sight radio. You need high-bandwidth, low-latency satellite communication that is resistant to electronic warfare.
Right. Israel uses sophisticated satellite data links and frequency hopping techniques that are some of the most guarded secrets in the entire defense establishment. What they have mastered is the handover process. A drone might take off under the control of a local ground station, but then the control is handed over to a centralized mission control center in the center of the country. The pilots are sitting in air-conditioned trailers in the Negev or near Tel Aviv, while the drone is thousands of miles away.
So we have the big strategic drones like the Eitan, the versatile workhorses like the Hermes 900, and the loitering munitions like the Heron. That covers the high altitude and long range stuff. But the second half of Daniel's prompt was about miniaturization, and this is where the conflict in Gaza, particularly the operations in 2025 and early 2026, has really pushed the technology into a new realm.
This is where it gets truly fascinating from a technical perspective. For decades, the trend in aerospace was bigger, faster, higher. But in urban warfare, specifically in the dense alleys of places like Gaza City or Khan Yunis, a big drone is useless. You need something that can see around a corner, look through a window, or even go underground into a tunnel. This is the shift from large, expensive platforms to expendable swarms.
And that is exactly what we've seen in the operations over the last year. The deployment of quadcopters has become ubiquitous. But as you said earlier, these aren't the kind of drones you buy at a hobby shop.
Not even close. We are looking at platforms like the Elbit Lanius. It is a small, racing-style quadcopter that is designed for indoor flight. It uses SLAM, which stands for Simultaneous Localization and Mapping. This means the drone doesn't need GPS, which doesn't work inside buildings or tunnels anyway. It uses its own sensors to build a three-dimensional map of the room it is in as it flies.
So it can navigate a dark, rubble-filled hallway autonomously, without a pilot steering it through the door?
Yes, an operator can tell it to clear a building, and the drone will fly through the doors, map the rooms, identify if there are people inside, and distinguish between a combatant holding a weapon and a civilian. And here is the kicker. The Lanius can be armed. It can carry a small explosive charge. If it identifies a threat, it can fly right up to the target and detonate. It is essentially a flying intelligent hand grenade.
That is a terrifying thought, but from a tactical standpoint, it solves a massive problem. In the past, to clear a room, you had to send in soldiers. That is the most dangerous part of urban combat. Now, you send in a swarm of these micro-drones.
And the word swarm is important there. We are seeing the transition from a single operator flying a single drone to a single operator managing a swarm of drones that communicate with each other. If one drone gets shot down or loses signal, the others adjust their search pattern to cover the gap. This is where the AI-driven target acquisition really shines. The processing power required to do this in real time on a tiny battery-powered device is incredible.
It also forces the adversary to change their tactics. We have seen reports of fighters using low-tech countermeasures. They hang blankets across streets to block the view of drones, or they use simple signal jammers. In the 12-day war of 2025, we saw a lot of this, adversaries using smoke and mirrors to confuse the AI sensors. But the drones are getting smarter. If they lose their signal, they are programmed to return to their last known good coordinate, or even continue their mission autonomously based on the last data they had.
It is a constant game of cat and mouse. One of the second-order effects of this miniaturization is what it does to the infantry. Every squad now has a drone operator. It has become as fundamental as having a radio or a machine gun. They use drones like the Thor or the Magni. These are small quadcopters that can be launched from a soldier's hand. They provide immediate, over-the-hill intelligence. If a squad is pinned down, they don't have to guess where the fire is coming from. They pop a drone up, see the sniper on the roof 3 blocks away, and relay those coordinates directly to a tank or an airstrike.
This really speaks to that sensor-to-shooter loop you mentioned earlier. It is about shrinking the time and distance between seeing and acting. But I want to go back to something you said about the AI. How much of the decision-making is actually being handed over to the machine? When we talk about AI-driven target acquisition in the Gaza operations, are these drones making the call to fire?
That is the big ethical and technical question of 2026. Officially, in the Israeli model, there is always a human in the loop, or at least a human on the loop. However, the speed of modern combat is pushing us toward a reality where the human is only there to say no. The system assumes it will engage unless it is told otherwise. This is part of a broader Israeli defense strategy that uses AI to process massive amounts of data. Systems like the Gospel or Lavender, which have been discussed in the context of recent operations, use machine learning to suggest targets based on a huge array of intelligence inputs. The drones are the physical sensors that feed that beast and the precision tools that carry out the results.
It is a complete integration. It reminds me of episode 1138, where we talked about the El Al security model. It is that same philosophy of layering technology, human intelligence, and constant adaptation. The drone is just one layer, but it is becoming the most visible one.
And the most profitable one. Israel is consistently one of the top 3 drone exporters in the world, alongside the United States and China. They have an edge because their systems are battle-proven. When a foreign military buys a Hermes 900, they know exactly how it performed in a high-intensity urban conflict. They aren't just buying hardware, they are buying the operational doctrine that comes with it.
That brings up a good point about the democratization of this technology. While Israel is selling these high-end systems to governments, the technology is also trickling down. The components for quadcopters are cheap. The software for AI computer vision is becoming open source. Are we reaching a point where Israel's dominance might be challenged by cheaper, off-the-shelf alternatives?
To some extent, yes. We have seen how groups like Hezbollah or even Hamas have used commercial drones modified to carry munitions. But there is a huge gap between a hobby drone with a grenade taped to it and a military-grade system with an encrypted satellite link and a multispectral sensor suite. Israel's expertise isn't just in the airframe, it is in the integration. It is the ability to make the drone talk to the tank, which talks to the satellite, which talks to the intelligence analyst. That networking is incredibly hard to replicate.
So, what does this mean for the future of the battlefield? If we look at the trajectory from the 1980s to today, we have gone from strategic ambiguity and clunky surveillance planes like the Scout and the Mastiff to autonomous swarms and wide-area persistent surveillance. Where does it go from here?
I think the next frontier is drone-on-drone combat. As drones become the primary threat, you need a way to stop them that doesn't involve firing a $1 million Patriot missile at a $10,000 drone. We are seeing the development of interceptor drones, small, fast quadcopters designed specifically to ram into or shoot down other drones. It is an aerial dogfight, but at a micro scale and at incredible speeds.
It's like a robotic immune system for the airspace.
That is a great way to put it. And it leads to a bigger question that defense analysts are debating right now: is the era of the manned fighter jet effectively over? When you look at what a Heron TP can do, or what a swarm of loitering munitions can do, you start to wonder why you would ever put a human pilot in a cockpit. A human is a liability. They need oxygen, they can't handle high G-forces, and their loss is a political and strategic catastrophe. A drone can pull maneuvers that would kill a human, and if it gets shot down, you just roll another one out of the factory.
I can see the argument, but there is still something about human intuition and the ability to make complex moral judgments in a split second that AI hasn't mastered yet. At least not in the way a veteran pilot can.
For now, you are right, but that gap is closing. And as the OOD-A loop, observe, orient, decide, act, gets shorter and shorter, the human brain becomes the bottleneck. If the machine can observe and decide in milliseconds, the human who takes 2 seconds to process the information has already lost the fight. That is the reality that Israeli R&D is leaning into. They are trying to remove the bottleneck.
It is a sobering thought, but it also has massive implications for the civilian world, which I think is an important takeaway for our listeners. This isn't just about war. The same technology that allows a drone to map a rubble-filled building in Gaza can be used to inspect a collapsed bridge or map a deep-sea pipeline.
The dual-use nature of this technology is a major driver of the Israeli economy. Many of the engineers who develop these military systems go on to start companies in agriculture, where drones are used to monitor crop health with the same multispectral sensors used to find hidden targets. Or in logistics, where autonomous flight paths are used for delivery. If you want to see where the civilian drone market is going, look at what the Israeli defense contractors were doing 5 years ago.
That is a great tip. For those of you who want to track these trends, You can actually look at public procurement databases and defense trade show reports. When you see a new sensor being advertised for the Hermes line, you can bet there will be a startup in Tel Aviv using that same tech for something like forest fire detection within a few years.
It is a constant cycle of innovation, and it all goes back to that shift in 2022 when the censorship was lifted. By being open about their capabilities, Israel didn't just show their hand. They invited the world to buy into their vision of what the future of security looks like. It was a strategic move that turned a secret weapon into a global standard.
Well, I think we have covered a lot of ground here. We went from the massive Heron TP down to the room-clearing quadcopters and the AI that ties them all together. It is clear that the Israeli drone program is no longer a hidden asset, but a primary pillar of their national power.
And a primary export. If you are interested in the broader context of how Israel manages these high-tech assets, I really recommend checking out episode 11 and 38, where we talked about El Al's security model. It gives you a sense of the mindset that goes into protecting these kinds of high-value systems. And for a look at how this technology clashes with other forms of warfare, episode 7038 on the sabotage of Iran's air defenses is a great companion piece to this discussion.
Definitely. We have a huge archive of these topics. You can find all of them at myweirdprompts.com. We have an RSS feed there if you want to subscribe directly, and we are also on Spotify. If you are a Telegram user, just search for My Weird Prompts and join the channel. We post every time a new episode drops.
And hey, before we sign off, if you have been listening to the show for a while and you are finding these deep dives valuable, please take a second to leave us a review on your podcast app. It really helps the algorithm show the podcast to other people who might be interested in these kinds of technical and strategic discussions. We genuinely appreciate the support.
We really do. Thanks again to our housemate Daniel for sending in this prompt. It was a great excuse to finally talk about the drone program in depth.
It was long overdue. All right, I think that is it for us today. I am Herman Poppleberry.
And I am Corn. Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. We will see you in the next one.
Take care, everyone.
So, Herman, do you think we will ever see a drone that can actually replace the intuition of a sloth?
I don't know, Corn. Moving that slowly and deliberately might be the one thing the AI hasn't figured out yet. It is too busy trying to be fast.
There is power in the pause.
Maybe in episode 2000 we will be talking about the strategic slow-motion drone.
I will look forward to it. Bye for now.
Bye.
One last thing to mention. If you go to the website, there is a contact form. If you have a topic like Daniel's that you want us to dig into, send it over. We love getting these weird prompts that push us into new territory.
Yeah, keep them coming. The more technical, the better.
All right, now we are really going. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Seriously, check out the website, myweirdprompts.com. It is all there.
We get it, Corn. They know.
Just making sure.
All right, see you later.
See you later.
Peace.
Peace.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts.